Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is the reboot of the entire Resident Evil film franchise that we have already gotten. This one, of course, trying to aim for a more faithful adaptation to the games. I believe 1 and 2 is the games that they are trying to properly bring to the big screen because, of course, we all remember what happened with the Paul W.S. Anderson movies. Maybe they started off a little trying to be faithful, and then they just eventually just ran off the rails and became its own bullshit nonsense thing. And this movie, of course, takes place in Raccoon City, where the T-Virus is about to kind of fully release itself, and Umbrella is trying to keep it contained. There are a few people left even in this city. They're, kind of just there because they have to be, and they're trying to survive the zombie outbreak. You have some characters from RPD, the Raccoon Police Department, and they're trying to survive. That's the movie. That's the entire film. I have no attachment to the games. I have never played them before. I've been told that they're really great. They'd probably be something right up my alley because they are horror related, but I've just never been able to get a copy of any of the games and play them myself, so I really have no emotional attachment to these games. All I've known about Resident Evil for the longest time is what the movies that Paul W.S. Anderson and Milla Jovovich have been involved in have kind of told me about Resident Evil, which according to the fans is all bullshit, and a lot of it is not really lining up with what they've seen before. It's a lot of just them making stuff up on the spot, it seems like. So I was kind of just interested in this movie because obviously when they're rebooting this, they're gonna try to be more like what people love about the games and gonna be completely separate from what Paul W.S. Anderson did before, so that's obviously a huge relief, showing any sign of competency, which those last Resident Evil movies really did not have. That's a good sign, and it had a good cast attached to it, so I was interested in that. But then I found out who was making the movie. That would be Johannes Roberts, who is directing and writing this, and maybe he is a big fan of the games, maybe he had a big passion for them and bringing them to the big screen. But as far as his track record for movies go, the last couple years he's been bringing us films like The Other Side of the Door, 47 Meters Down, 47 Meters Down Uncaged, and The Strangers Prey at Night, movies that I'm not a particularly big fan of. They're not all completely terrible. Like I remember Strangers Prey at Night had a couple like redeeming elements to it. Like there was like this pool scene that was like really intense, and you can tell he was trying to make that movie with kind of like this 80s kind of sensibility. So I do want to give him some props for that. Some things he even brings into the filmmaking style of this movie. But then I became worried about this movie just because, well, I don't think a lot of these stories that he's been directing have been all around the best. Even 47 Meters Down Uncaged, which is like the last one he did before this one, it has a lot of like incompetencies, not just from screenwriting but also directing. So I was really worried going into this movie. Like, is this gonna be in good hands? Are we just gonna have a repeat of what we already had before? And this movie is definitely way better than the other Resident Evil films. That being said, showing any sign of directorial flair, any sign of competency compared to that franchise. It's kind of an easy thing to say, and it's kind of a very easy thing to just obtain. Like, hey, can you show that you are a competent enough director? Sure, okay, better movie. You've made the better film here. But legitimately, like, Johannes Roberts does direct this movie with a really great sense of what the atmosphere should be. There's actually quite a few sequences that occur where, moments in them I was kind of like, I'm legitimately kind of freaked out about what could be just running in around the corner, because that's kind of how a lot of this is treated, that they just show up and start getting at you. They don't really build up to the jump scare that in a way a lot of typical kind of horror movies do. It's just kind of like, hey, you're following this character, oh shit, someone's coming in. It's not like the character's like anticipating the jump and you then start to anticipate the jump and then something jumps at them. It's treated a little differently, so he does show that he can be competent. And there's some fairly entertaining to watch horror sequences in this. Everyone in the cast is doing a solid job. There's no one here that I would say is doing a bad job. I'd say the weakest thing about the cast is sometimes the way Johannes Roberts directs them and has their dialogue written out. There's quite a few times where I was like, ooh, that dialogue, it feels like a game dialogue. Like, you're playing as a character, you walk by an item and you can like pick it up and look at it, and the character gives their internal monologue about it. And there's plenty of lines of dialogue kind of like that in the movie. Not that that's inherently bad, but like it's just a little goofy, the execution. Like, I'm gonna say this out loud and proud. There's just this stuff like that I noticed. But then there's also like some moments of acting where they don't really sell it. Like in the beginning, there's this little girl, Claire Redfield, who sees like this woman in like a weird mask and weird robes, kind of walking around being creepy, giving her toys and running away, and she's just kind of like, hello, who are you? You know, like, no, like, they imply that this has already happened before, like, you know, stuff like her seeing this thing has, you know, happened before, so it's kind of a, oh, okay, it's just another night with creepy bitch, you know? But there's still no sense of like, holy shit, I'm like actually terrified because I'm like a 5-year-old, you know? Which I feel like would definitely be shown and would help kind of connect to everything. But despite those limitations that the cast kind of works with, you know, they do a solid job in the roles that they have, but then it leads to a bigger issue, at least for me, which is I don't care about any of these characters. Even Claire and Chris, who they give like the most as far as like character goes, you know, they have that opening scene that is them as kids in this orphanage. You get more of a tragic backstory with them. But then as the movie goes on, they cut away from that flashback. Their characters are kind of solely defined by, they have a past, now they're badass. So we're gonna just take them through plot point to plot point, kind of just rushing through everything, and I didn't really feel a sense of like connection between them. I didn't really get a sense of like what was actually, they mentioned that Claire ran away from the Umbrella and Raccoon City orphanage, but they never show like what has she done since then, you know, how has she been doing, you know, what kind of dynamic will she and Chris have now that they have to rebond, and how has Chris been holding up? How did he survive not getting experimented on in this orphanage? I guess they didn't want him, they didn't want to do that, but yeah. So like what is, you know, it just seems like there's a lot of details kind of missing as far as actually fleshing out the characters, but then also doing the extra mile of getting you invested in them. It's just a lot of, well, you've probably played the games, but also we showed you the backstory in the beginning, so like that's all you need, right? And it's like, not really. You do need to put in some extra work to get people to care about these characters. Because even the way the other characters are introduced, like everyone else in the RPD, it's like a very quick diner scene where it's like, hey, we're all just getting along here. All right, now we're going through the paces of just take them through plot point to plot point. And, you know, Jill Valentine, they mention she has a thing for Wesker. She's hot for him, but it's not like you can sense any actual romantic tension. It's not like you actually get a scene from her perspective, I would say. Like, there's never a moment where you feel like you're being placed inside a character's head. It's just a lot of you're observing them do stuff. You know, that's kind of the feel. You know, it definitely is written with this idea of like, we have to take these plot points in the game, string them together, and also make it relatively short, like a short movie, hour, 40 minutes, I believe is the total runtime. And you can kind of feel it. It definitely feels like Johannes Roberts had his outline. And he was like, okay, let me write the first draft. Let me just write through it, see where we end up. And then Sony came in when he was done with him going like, I still have a ways to go, but this proves that we have a movie here. We can get this working. And Sony and Screen Gems were just like, no, that's fine. That script right there, we can just start shooting right now. Fuck it. You know, we're Sony and Screen Gems. We're like the worst company on earth. For making movies, I should rephrase, like they're the worst film company for making movies. And maybe that's an exaggeration, maybe they aren't the worst film company for making movies, at least today. But this movie just reeks of problems that I've seen in other Sony movies before. It seems like they even have an ending. It's a really bad, abrupt ending at first that I was like, this is so lame how they think they're ending on a really cool shot, but it just feels so abrupt, and I feel nothing for this. It further disassociates me from connecting with these characters, but then they have a post-credit scene where they heavily hint at another one, thinking that they earned it, you know? And it just reminded me so much of Venom. Just like, hey, we don't really know what we're doing the first time, but don't worry, we're going to try more the second time because we're going to get you excited for the next one more. You know, it even reminded me of like Escape Room, how it was a pretty okay thriller premise, and then all of a sudden the ending happens and it's just nothing but sequel bait. Yeah, and kind of hinting at, man, the next one's going to be even more epic. And then the next one comes out and it's just utter bullshit, similar to how they treated Venom Let There Be Carnage too. It's just, I can't get excited because I feel like I know how these things work, especially over at the Sony offices. It's going to be like, well, okay, we've made it through this one, and if we make enough money, we can do another one and do more game stuff that people come to expect. But we're also going to treat that with the care that we did with the first movie, just so we can hint at another installment that maybe they'll care more about. It's exhausting to watch these characters that all have that interesting kind of setup where it's like, okay, I can see where you can take this character in a neat direction and just do something with them that speaks to like a larger theme of the movie or something like that, you know, do something. But it all just falls flat. Like Wesker, he's like, you know, shifty hot dude is essentially him. And I just felt nothing from the entire movie. Like, as far as like antagonists that aren't supposed to be creatures, you know, that falls flat. There's Neil McDonough plays another one. He's like the doctor who's like in charge of everything. This is my life's work. And they introduce him again, set aside from the flashback, you know, they reintroduce him with like, hey, he's got a family, look at him trying to care for his daughter right now. And then he gets a call and he's got to go, and he takes his family to the third act essentially, because that's the next time he pops up. And it's just a very quick, all right, we're wrapping this up. And I just didn't feel anything. It seemed like they were trying at first, and then they just completely dropped the ball and didn't know what to do. Even though it seems like it would be pretty obvious, like, hey, maybe like we can do it this way. We can work a different angle with this character. Maybe make a villain that is a little bit more sympathetic. I don't know. Let's do something interesting. I'm not saying like this should have been like a TV series or something to like really flesh everything out. You can do it just in a longer movie, a differently written movie, because the way Johannes Roberts directs this movie, and in some ways like, you know, designs the creatures, does the set design. Like I even liked like a lot of like the plain zombie makeup where it looks a little bit more like Dawn of the Dead, kind of like just paint gray on them. Like I kind of like the look of that, you know, instead of just like the everything's dripping all the time kind of zombie approach that a lot of them do, even though that is in there, like the gooier kind of looks of it, and that also looks cool. But I liked what they were doing technically as far as setting everything up. But then when it came to actually writing a good, well-rounded script and having characters you care about, that's when it completely fell flat for me. Like Leon, you know, interesting setup. He's a rookie cop because he just got transferred because he kind of messed up on the last job, and his dad's a big important figure in the force, so he had him transferred. That's an interesting take, especially since it seems like he has no idea how to be a proper, you know, competent cop, you know, and it seems like maybe he borders on like, I don't even want to do this. Not that he ever even says that directly, where he's like, I didn't even want this job or whatever. I don't even want to be a cop. You know, it's just a lot of like, hey, ever wonder how I became a cop? Me too. It's like, yeah, no, actually go back. I am legit wondering. Maybe we should talk more about this. Maybe we should get to know Leon a bit more before we just completely move on and just kind of treat him as just comedic relief character, because that's kind of all he is. Not that it's really all that funny. It's not terrible or anything, but it's just like there's an interesting character there. And it seems like his whole purpose is just so everyone can save him. They can yell at him and call him an idiot just so it builds up to this thing near the end that's supposed to be like a defining turn of the character or whatever. It was just so lame. I mean, even the way they tried to show the way the city is just completely fallen apart and how what's been happening ever since Umbrella has been there. It's done in a Star Wars-esque kind of text right in the front, and then they just keep moving, just dropping you into like, hey, look, people bleeding from the eyes and, you know, little weird bird creatures. It's like, I would find that more interesting having like a series of, you know, scenes or like a montage early on just showing like how it all started and then how it's slowly kind of worked into everything and just everything's fallen apart. I would have liked that more than just the flashback scene introducing Claire and Chris and then text right in the middle. This is what's going on, and just let's keep it moving. Because it's interesting to me to see how this specific company, Umbrella, and this specific virus, the T-virus, have actually like worked into it, because it's doing a lot of different things. And instead it's just like, well, if you played the games, you kind of get it, and we want to keep this thing going, so let's keep rolling. And even then there's like some weird like directing, staging stuff where I was legitimately kind of wondering like how, like I can't see the way you're setting this up, and a part of it is probably intentional, but also it's not clear enough, you know, and it's just, it feels almost like it was a mistake. But we're kind of just playing it off as like, well, it's fine, whatever, you know. There's some really bad CGI, like involving a dog, or like, you know, the more bigger monsters they introduce, even though they look cool and they look good if you place them in a video game, it just doesn't blend well with live action, and at that point it just kind of becomes a big cartoon. So it has better acting than the entirety of the last Resident Evil franchise. It's got better design work, you know, it feels like there's a lot more care as far as like bringing every aspect of the game that people love into live action. There's legitimately some suspenseful sequences and a solid score that was, you know, way better than whatever was going on with the scores in the last couple movies. That was something that, especially as the series went on, got more and more frustrating, was the scores. This one is a little bit more what you'd expect from a horror movie, and it's fine. It fits the atmosphere really well. Cool stuff. So there's aspects to like here. I can't say that this is the Resident Evil movie everyone's been waiting on, though, because I always thought that it would be a bit better, and I could even see where they could have made it better. But, you know, we gotta focus on just making the first one so we can kickstart a new franchise. We know that the other Resident Evil movies, despite not being really that faithful to the games, made a lot of money, so if we just make one that's actually faithful this time, maybe we got something here. So I don't know how well they're gonna do this weekend or anything like that, but I guess good luck to them. I do hope that, you know, the next time around, if they can make another one, they actually make like a cohesive narrative with character arcs, maybe a theme, you know, something to talk about in the midst of all this zombie action and horror stuff. But I mean, shoot, man, I've seen how Sony franchises worked out in most cases, so I highly doubt it. I did not think they really earned that post-credit scene stinger of like, hey, you know, you're really excited for this now, right? And I was like, no, because it involves a character that I don't care about, and now you're introducing another character that's important to the games. That's just, this is their introduction to the franchise. Just them walking in going like, we got plans for you, we got plans together actually, and we're gonna be involved in the next one. It's like, stop doing this. Why do we keep doing this? I'm gonna give Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City a C-. I wanted to like this. There's aspects to like about it. I just didn't think it was all, you know, overall there. Johannes Roberts, this is definitely my favorite film of his, if that says anything. My favorite film of his, of the ones I've seen. I just wish that he could work with like a better script, you know, because I do think, you know, he has the right kind of sensibilities. He does clearly have some kind of a passion for the horror genre because he's always trying something. But it just, I think he does need a better script for everything he does. I think that would really help his directing style. But if you've seen Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. Leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.